I'm Emily Chang, and this is Bloomberg Technology. Coming up, Bitcoin hits another gear on a bigger stage. Why Sunday's CME debut could play a defining role in the cryptocurrency's continuing march to the mainstream. Plus, the blackout at America's busiest airport, how tech can help keep the power running next time the lights go out. And stepping up security with just a week to go for last-minute shoppers, an eBay exec shares tips on protecting information online. But first, to our lead, the world's biggest exchange just joined the Bitcoin revolution. Bitcoin futures started trading Sunday night on the CME just a week after Chicago rival Cboe introduced similar derivatives on the volatile cryptocurrency. CME is a much bigger player in futures, with many traders expecting it to make a bigger splash in the space. The exchange got off to a faster start with more efficient pricing. Its most active contract changed hands 221 times in the first hour versus 570 during Cboe's debut. It's a huge win because CME's contracts are 5 times more valuable. They're tied to 5 Bitcoin compared to only 1 with Cboe's futures. Joining us now, Polychain Capital CEO Olaf Carlson-Wee. Polychain is a hedge fund that invests in digital currencies, including Ethereum, and is backed by Andreessen Horowitz and Union Square Ventures. Also with us, our Bloomberg editor-at-large, Corey Johnson. So, Olaf, I'll start with you. What's your take on the first week at the CME?
So it's very, very important that these kinds of more advanced financial products and hedging mechanisms are introduced for these institutional investors. For a lot of these institutional investors, it's really the first time they've been able to go long or short on Bitcoin.
So we have a chart here, #BTV7264, showing how futures got off at the CME, at the Cboe today as well. Corey, what's your take on the significance of this week versus last week?
Well, I think, this is a product and exchange where a lot of big money trades, and a lot of bigger funds and groups are unable to trade this for legal reasons, or unable to trade the actual currency itself. So this is the only product that they can legally get involved in, whether it's based on their charter or depending on where they're trading. So they can actually, a lot more money can be attracted to these cyber currencies without actually even being involved with the cyber currencies themselves.
So Olaf, how does the last 2 weeks change what you're doing day to day at your hedge fund?
Well, so the main thing is that there's been
makes you wish you were more long, right?
Yeah, well, we're long only, so. But there's just been a huge amount of media interest in this area. There's been a huge number of consumer retailers coming online, just purchasing Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. I think that we're seeing more and more institutional and Wall Street players coming onto the scene and wanting to go long in this area. So I just think it's great for the whole industry, and it's really pushing things forward.
Right, Corey, you also have TD Ameritrade on Friday saying they're now getting into this,
Right, but with significant requirements for margin, given the volatility, requiring that people have just got so much money behind this in order to trade. It's not as simple as just trading a stock or even a currency. A lot of that owing to volatility, but I think also owing to kind of the mania around this.
So, Olaf, you and I were talking before the show. The price has just soared. I feel like every time you come on, I say, "Are we in a bubble?" And the price keeps going higher and higher and higher. I mean, does the rapid rise of the price make you question the legitimacy of the value here?
Well, so what we're seeing in a way is it's not that dissimilar from the rapid rise you might see from other technologies. So when you look at a breakout startup like, say, Uber, we're seeing a similar rapid rise there, but it's all happening in private markets that are relatively illiquid. Here you're seeing retail investors with the ability to actually gain exposure to this breakthrough technology and see that rise very viscerally day to day. So I think it's not that dissimilar from the types of growth you might see from other kind of breakout industries or technologies. I do think that this is much bigger, though, than any individual company. So it's not surprising to me at all that we're seeing this type of growth. I think that it feels somewhat inevitable to many of us that have been in this ecosystem for many years.
Corey, do you agree with that comparison?
Well, I mean, it's not just the coins, right? It's not just it's not Ethereum and Bitcoin, Ripple. There is a lot of junk out there. There are a lot of stocks that are flying a lot. I was looking today at a company that was a Chinese energy company. Now it's a blockchain Internet of Things exploration company with 18 employees, and it's got a $3.5 billion valuation. Stock's up 860% in the last week. That's a mania, and that's mania not based on actually what's going on or even what the potential is for this technology. It's just a mania of people running stocks.
You know, what I think is pushing
frauds.
a lot of behavior like that is the inability of these institutional investors to get exposure. Because a lot of these institutional investors don't have the ability to buy the underlying assets, I think when they do have the ability to buy a stock in this area, it inflates the value.
But whenever you see a mania, whether it's the dot-com boom or whether, heck, when it was uranium in the 1960s, you would see, well, there were legitimate investments in real companies, there was a lot of junk and there were a lot of hucksters and there were a lot of people trying to take the money of people who were interested in an idea and run with it somewhere else. We saw that in real estate, you know, not too many years ago. 10 years ago in real estate, there were people selling fake properties. There were people who were borrowing money to own many homes. There was all kinds of financial fraud, both at giant companies like Countrywide and on an individual basis. And I think that we're seeing that in this general notion of cyber currencies. And once in a while, we can grab onto some real things like Bitcoin, like Ethereum, and we can look at some fake things like some of these stocks that are running with no fundamentals whatsoever and recognize those are happening in concert.
So, Olaf, are you seeing anything that makes you uneasy? And if so, what?
So I just think that this area is so emergent and so experimental. I actually think it's really good that money is flowing into things that are less sure. Now, that said, you know, I think my...
Not for the people who lose money, but...
Yeah, no, of course. But, you know, I think my number one concern is people basically investing in things that they don't understand. This is very complicated and esoteric technology, and I think that your kind of retail mom-and-pop investors should be careful, particularly when they're investing in more experimental technologies outside of what I might call the blue-chip cryptocurrencies here, like Bitcoin and Ethereum.
How long do you think it will be before we see other crypto futures being offered?
Oh, I think over this year we'll see dozens of other crypto futures.
And I think we're going to see some stocks blow up too, and some real frauds emerge. I mean, you know, one of these companies today is this Longfin Corporation, traded 15 million shares at a $20 valuation. 2 days ago, it's the stock, again, is flying through the roof with basically no financials. A company that brought the IPO, it's got 13 censures against it from securities regulators, has paid hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines. And I don't think the people who are buying this thing have any idea who they're buying it from or what that firm's history is. They just want to get near something that's blockchainy and see it go up.
If there is some sort of crash or correction or let's all come back to Earth event, Olaf, how far out is something like that?
Well, so if you kind of zoom out, cryptocurrency has been filled with these pretty massive corrections throughout its history. I think this is just a natural part of where there's a disparity between the number of people that see what feels like a somewhat inevitable future and then where the technology is today.
And to bring it back to the news of today, the trading of these future contracts makes it less likely that we'll see downside or any volatility like we've seen in the past, because what it means is on the downside, you're going to have short sellers looking to cover those short positions and buying positions as prices come off. So you won't see those 20% corrections like we've seen in Bitcoin many, many times in the last couple of years.
So first half of 2018, Olaf, what will you be watching?
Oh, so I spend most of my time watching the more emergent technologies here. So these are the various things being built on top of Ethereum, new blockchains. It's all of the things that I would advise others to take risks in unless they fully understand what they're doing.
All right. Olaf Carlson-Wee of Polychain Capital. Great to have you here on the show, as well as our editor-at-large, Corey Johnson. And stocks are wrapping up the last few trading days of the year by hitting new records. Investors are optimistic Congress will pass tax cuts this week, and tech stocks led the gains, with the Nasdaq briefly crossing 7,000 in the session. Coming up, one of the busiest airports in the world came to a halt this weekend. We'll discuss how tech can and should improve travel as the busy holiday season gets into full swing. And Bloomberg Technology is live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Technology, weekdays 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. This is Bloomberg. WhatsApp was given a month to comply with French privacy law and to stop transferring data from Facebook users without their consent. the country's regulator warned. CNIL, France's data protection authority, said it wants to ensure the highest level of transparency on the massive data transfer from WhatsApp to Facebook, according to a statement posted on its website Monday. This comes after 28 EU privacy watchdogs published a letter sent in October to WhatsApp's co-founder to reassert their concerns over changes to the messaging service's privacy policy. Meantime, power is back on at one of the busiest airports in the world. Hartsfield-Jackson International Airport in Atlanta experienced a massive power outage lasting 11 hours on Sunday, causing thousands of flight cancellations that impacted air travel across the U.S. So we have to ask, what technology is being used to improve air travel right now? Justin Bachman covers the airline industry for Bloomberg News and joins us now from New York. So, Justin, first of all, what happened in Atlanta?
Well, it appears there was a fire with a key component in the electrical supply system, so it wasn't really an airline problem so much as the airport problem, which shut down everybody.
So is there a risk of this happening again? Is there a risk of this happening at more airports?
Well, I think there's a risk in terms of what is the infrastructure like and what are those systems set up to do. You really have to separate what's going on at the airport with what the airlines themselves are doing, which they are huge IT corporations themselves.
So talk to us about the infrastructure of these airports and how something like this could happen.
Well, I think in this case we're talking about not so simple, but a simple issue of the electricity goes out and nobody can operate and move planes. What we've seen in the past, though, and it's happened to Delta in Atlanta last year, they had a multi-day problem where their data center went out and they were forced to build a new one and spend a huge amount of money and put that in a northern suburb. So just last week, the CEO said that can't happen again to us because of the way we've set up our IT operation. But then there were storms in April, which also hit Atlanta, and that caused a 3-day problem. So we've seen a recurring series where airline technology has really been the weak fault, and in response, there's been a huge amount of investment made in that area, so that you've got places like Delta and Southwest, which also had a problem. They have both spent just hundreds of millions of dollars to just really get the reliability, and the redundancy in that system. Because when they go down, I mean, you're talking about more people than they've had in the past, more people flying, planes that are more crowded than they've ever been with historic load factors. So an airline cannot really just get back up and running as quickly as it used to because of all the people. So for them, that means they really need to make sure this technology is as robust as possible.
How many people were impacted by this? Well,
there were quite a few people, because we're talking about more than 1,200 flights yesterday, 400 today, and then Southwest had a number as well. Atlanta, when you're talking about Delta, Atlanta is really the key hub in that airline. It's the busiest airport in the world, but it's also the busiest Delta hub, and they just put a lot of airplanes through there every single day. So, I mean, we're talking about a massive impact to an airline that, other carriers, it may not be quite as severe.
Now, it's hard not to jump to the worst case scenario, but is this the kind of vulnerability or weakness that somebody could exploit to perpetrate an attack?
Well, probably, in the sense that if you take out the electric supply or the power grid, then you're talking about all kinds of systems that can potentially be affected by that. What works at an airline, because they have their own backup power systems, and what is tied to the infrastructure. I think that's a complicated question, but when you're talking about the ability to shut down all the power, you're going to have a lot of problems no matter where you are.
And obviously, we're in the middle of the busiest travel time of the year. How might this new technology be, helping to ease some of these travel pains that anyone who travels right now might experience over the next couple of weeks?
Well, I mean, I think with all the money that's been spent, you could say that airline infrastructure is probably more robust than it was 18 months ago or 24 months ago. At the same time, this wasn't right where the crazy holiday travel starts on Wednesday or so. It could have been a lot worse. I mean, you could have had a lot more people in terms of what happens later this week. But airlines, this money is spent very carefully. They know where it went, and they know what it's supposed to do. So we haven't really had a test of a Delta or Southwest since a lot of this infrastructure investment was made. I think over time we're going to see how well they get tested when it is their own IT problem and not just the electricity going out.
All right, Bloomberg's Justin Bachman, thanks so much for that update. Coming up, ESPN is in need of new leadership after a shocking announcement. Just who will take the reins at the self-proclaimed worldwide leader in sports? Next. This is Bloomberg. While Star Wars: The Last Jedi may be dividing the hearts and minds of wannabe Jedis across the globe, it's certainly not doing so at the box office. The latest installment in the franchise raked in $220 million during its opening weekend, 5% higher than estimated. That makes it the second highest domestic debut ever, behind what else but 2015's Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Globally, it topped $230 million and has yet to open in China. The Last Jedi has pushed Disney over the $2 billion mark this year to become the top-grossing movie studio of 2017. And sticking with Disney, a surprise resignation has shaken up the sports entertainment world. John Skipper has stepped down as the president of Disney-owned ESPN. In a statement on the company website, Skipper said he has struggled with a substance addiction for years, but didn't provide specifics. Former ESPN president and chairman George Bodenheimer will take over as acting chairman on an interim basis. Since the news broke, Bloomberg has learned that Disney will most likely look at 2 internal candidates to replace Skipper. Joining us now, our Bloomberg media and entertainment reporter, Lucas Shaw, who brought us the news of the new line of succession. Lucas, before we go there, I want to talk a little bit more about what has happened to John Skipper here. He did release a statement saying, "Today I've resigned from my duties as president of ESPN. I have struggled for many years with a substance addiction. I've decided that the most important thing I can do right now is to take care of my problem." What more do we know about what happened here?
Not a whole lot. I mean, I've spoken with a number of people at ESPN, people who do a lot of work with ESPN. Everybody was very surprised by this. You know, John Skipper is one of the more kind of candid and intelligent executives out there, not the kind of person you'd expect to have a substance abuse problem. And there are people who worked very closely with him who had no idea that this was an issue. You know, there had been some rumors about his job security related to the performance of ESPN, but nothing on a personal basis. You know, you saw throughout the day a number of senior ESPN staffers, writers, TV hosts talk about what a great boss he'd been and how supportive he'd been. So this came as a complete surprise.
All right, the timing is interesting given what ESPN is grappling with. Who do you think might take over here?
I would guess that the front runner is Justin Connolly, you know, who's the head of distribution. He oversees the relationships with all these pay TV operators. You know, they've put George Bodenheimer, who ran ESPN for a long time before and is actually a couple of years younger than John Skipper, back in charge for now. My guess is that's just a temporary thing. Bodenheimer left kind of at the peak, and he probably doesn't want to have the stresses of trying to kind of fix some of ESPN's problems over the next several years. He's kind of like a comfortable placeholder that everybody knows, who knows the business really well, knows all the employees, and everybody respects. And that gives them time to figure out, do they want to hire someone internally, like Justin Connolly, like Connor Schell, or do they want to go externally? I think Connolly and Schell were both people that may have gotten the job in 2 or 3 years when Skipper was ready to retire. And this move today really forces their hand to try and figure it out a little bit sooner.
Let's talk a little bit about the challenges facing ESPN. I sat down with Bob Iger a couple of months ago at the Vanity Fair New Establishment Summit and asked this very question, what his plans were for ESPN. Take a listen to what he had to say then.
ESPN is still a very, very healthy, very, very profitable business, one of our most profitable businesses. It has a stable of live sports that it is licensed for a long period of time that is going to serve it extremely well, that is serving it well today on its traditional platform, that is starting to serve it well on new platforms, and that will serve it well for the foreseeable future. It is a product that is in demand.
Lucas, that's actually from an interview in May. You know, given this new twist, how do you think that impacts strategy going forward?
Well, the scary part about this timing for ESPN is that they're in the middle of trying to build this online service that is probably the biggest new initiative at the company in a really long time. ESPN is the most profitable cable network out there. Or ESPN and Fox News can probably fight for that crown. It's been the crown jewel at at Disney for such a long time, and it has just started to feel the effects of highlights being available all across social media, of being able to watch live sports on Amazon, on Twitter. And so they are trying to figure out how to reimagine that TV network while kind of keeping the boat afloat.
Okay, Lucas Shaw for us there in LA. Lucas, thank you so much for joining us. Coming up, we are just a week away from the Christmas holiday, and eBay exec joins us next on what the company is doing to compete with, of course, Amazon. This is Bloomberg.
I'm Elisa Parenti in Washington, and you're watching Bloomberg Technology. Let's start with a check of your first word news. At least 6 people are dead today after an Amtrak train derailed between Seattle and Portland. Several injuries are also reported. Some of the train's cars landed onto Interstate 5. The section of track where it derailed had just been upgraded as part of a $181 million project for a new, faster route. Another former GOP holdout is now on board to support the final Republican tax bill.
Madam President, I rise to express my support for the conference agreement on the Tax Cuts and Job Act, the first major overhaul of our tax code since 1986.
All but one GOP senator are reportedly on board. Arizona's Jeff Flake remains undecided. And the U.S. vetoed a resolution supported by 14 other UN Security Council members that would have required President Trump to rescind his declaration of Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. U.S. Ambassador Nikki Haley accused some members of trying to serve their own agendas.
What we witnessed here today in the Security Council is an insult. It won't be forgotten. It's one more example of the United Nations doing more harm than good in addressing the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Vice President Mike Pence will postpone his planned trip to the Middle East until next year as a critical Senate vote looms on the Republican tax overhaul. He'd planned to meet with Egyptian President el-Sisi and Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas canceled a meeting with Pence after President Trump's recognition of Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Global news 24 hours a day, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Elisa Parenti. This is Bloomberg. It's just after 5:30 p.m. here in Washington, 6:30 Tuesday morning now in Hong Kong. We are joined by Bloomberg's David Ingles with a look at the markets. Well, David, Wall Street did it once again, another fresh round of records across the board.
And we might just get it here in the Asia Pacific, at least. A very good morning from Hong Kong. We're just about to get underway here. We're about 1% short, less than 1% short of the record. And we're looking at least gains at the open here when you look at some of these futures contracts. About a fourth of 1% on the Nikkei 225. Lots of data to get through. Inflation comes out of South Korea. And in the EM space, we're also watching for the South African rand, of course, seeing a little bit of gains on top of the 2 days of very sharp gains against the U.S. dollar on the back of, I guess, more clarity there in the political front. And that's a wrap of markets so far, early Tuesday. I'm David Ingles here in Hong Kong. More from BTech coming up next.
This is Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang. It is crunch time for gift giving, and with the convenience of online shopping comes the threat of cybersecurity and fears of packages not getting delivered on time. Here to talk about its holiday shopping efforts and recent holiday trends, Scott Cutler, Senior Vice President of eBay Americas. So it's the holidays. Also, it's, time for your big rivalry between Amazon and Walmart. What are you doing to stave them off this holiday season?
Well, today is the biggest shopping day of the season. It's been a tremendous season so far. What we've seen is a lot of consumers showing up early for the holiday season. It's been tremendously disruptive for technology because you've seen retail store declines over the course of the year. You see a lot more people that are now favoring online purchasing. Most of those purchasers are going into mobile. And so it's been a great opportunity for eBay, and we've had a record holiday season so far.
So are you making any strategy changes this season as compared to last season, given the dominance of Amazon?
Yeah, Amazon is one of the largest retailers in the world, as you know. eBay on online commerce is larger than most of the traditional big box retailers in fashion, electronics. We're the #2 e-commerce player in the United States. We have tens of millions of sellers, 170 million buyers around the world. We're a very powerful e-commerce platform, but we're showing up in the holidays differently this year. We've been out early this year with tremendous deals, the best deals available online anywhere. And we've been telling consumers that you can come to eBay and find those great deals and get those packages under 3 days, most of the time for free, and you don't have to pay a subscription fee. So that's a big difference for eBay relative to most of our competitors.
What about cybersecurity? Obviously a huge issue right now, and especially right now during the holidays. What are you doing to protect your customers?
So for our customers, we've been one of the first for online retail, which is we guarantee that the things that our customers buy are real. And so we stand behind everything that's purchased on the site. And so cybersecurity and protecting both the identity of the purchaser, but most importantly, the shopping experience, that what you see is what you get, is really what eBay has always been about.
So, looking into 2018, we know you guys have seen increased engagement, but revenue growth hasn't kept up. Do you think that will happen in 2018?
Well, if you look at our last quarter results, we've actually it was our best quarter in a number of years. We've been growing faster than we have. We've been showing steady acceleration of growth. And in the holidays, we're having a record holiday season because I think what we're standing for eBay, which is you can come to the site, you can see over 1 billion things that are available. Most of those things are new, never used. They ship for under three days. And so you've got a great value proposition of a spectrum of value, but finding tremendous personalized gifts at eBay. That's been a really strong value proposition, been driving our growth through the holiday season.
Amazon is launching in Australia, where eBay is a leader. What are you doing to fend off the new competition?
Well, what most people don't know is that eBay is a global business. Mm-hmm. Over half of our revenue and transactions are outside of the United States. We have 170 million buyers, and we participate in 190 markets around the world. Many of the markets in which we operate, we're the #1 or the #2 e-commerce player in some of those markets. So we face competition from retailers in local markets as well as the large global players, of which Amazon is one. But we're really proud of our global position in some of these big markets.
So what about in Australia specifically, where you are the leader?
We are the leader. We intend to maintain our leadership position and grow our leadership position. And again, that value proposition for the consumer in Australia is very similar to the consumer here in the United States, where you have the world's inventory that's available to you on eBay.
There are looming questions about StubHub, continuing speculation about whether it makes sense to sell the StubHub business. What do you think, having worked there?
Yeah, so I ran StubHub the last couple of years. It's one of the great assets within the eBay portfolio. We have no intention to sell StubHub or to spin it out. And it's been one of those great stories over the last couple of years of people valuing experiences, maybe even more than goods. And so StubHub has been on a tremendous growth trajectory over the last couple of years.
Hottest holiday products on eBay right now?
Yeah, well, right now our deals team is back in the shop, busy like Santa's elves, trying to make sure we've got great deals that are available. This week, what we're going to see is a shift from those things that, once you get closer to the weekend, you'll see a shift into digital goods. We'll see a very active gift card season at the tail end of the week. And we're really excited with the branded products that are available right now on eBay from some great recognizable brands. We're seeing Fingerlings, which has been a hot item, Microsoft Xbox, Google Home Minis, Dyson, Adidas. All these things are available on eBay right now.
All right. Scott Cutler, eBay Senior Vice President of the Americas. Thanks so much for stopping by. Happy holidays. Sticking with shopping, if you haven't already purchased Apple AirPods, you may be out of luck. Apple's wireless earbuds seem to be in short supply everywhere. As of right now, Apple's website says a pair of AirPods can be delivered by January 5th at the earliest date. However, if you find yourself in desperate need of the wireless headphones, some sellers on eBay are offering the product for prices of $200 or more. Coming up, Hong Kong is revamping its IPO rules in order to lure a new group of companies to its exchange. Can they prevent another situation like Alibaba's U.S. listing? This is Bloomberg. Three years ago, Alibaba famously chose to list its IPO in the U.S. on the New York Stock Exchange, abandoning its plans to list in Hong Kong. Now, the Hong Kong Stock Exchange is targeting the next Alibaba by revamping its IPO rules. HK Exchange's CEO Charles Lee sat down with Bloomberg in an exclusive interview and explained who they are hoping to attract.
Essentially, three key elements. One, we're opening a new chapter for biotech companies. Basically, the drugs or product have not yet been approved. So, of course, they don't have any revenue yet because they don't.
Well, that's it. I mean, this is the thing which some people are pointing to, saying that you're selling out because you're ending this profit requirement for a new IPO.
Well, there's nothing inherent about having to have a profit. We already have a Chapter 18, which is a mining company. There's no dispute. There's value in there, but unless you build a railroad, you will not be able to sell your minerals. So, we do have pre-revenue, pre-profit concept today. Even in the main board today, you're able to list, without a profit as long as you're big enough. But I think in this, new reform, biotech companies, it's a huge value that has been created in that space, and China is a massive healthcare market. So I think we really want to make sure that we open for business for companies that are in the middle of, clinical trials, but yet not receiving approval to be able to list.
So, Charles, that was one of the three that you were talking about.
Yes, second is really waiting voting rights, and, basically dual class shares. The third is for secondary listing from companies that are already listed in the U.S. or U.K.
Okay, now let's move to how this should improve your IPO pipeline. Do you expect me to be talking to you this time next year and saying, well, I've doubled the number of people coming to the big board?
Yeah, I think, we look at it much broader than just, what's the IPO market. Obviously, the IPO market next year is going to be transformative. Next year is going to be fundamentally different from what we have seen before.
Right.
That's great. But in the end, we are trying to connect the market. We're trying to connect our market, the global market, with China's market. We're also connecting Chinese investors to global, products. And I think if we are able to introduce a complete new class of new economy companies, then our market is going to be fundamentally different, coupled with the money coming from the north, the southbound connect, and with the new economy. I think Hong Kong is going to be an explosive growth story for its financial market.
So when people want to come and list, they've got to be, quote, innovative, correct? They're part of the new economy. So how do you define those terms? I'm sure it's a very complicated process, but in a nutshell.
Yeah, in a nutshell, we're not only saying you have to be at least new economy, meaning that, either technology, intellectual properties, or whatever else. But that's in and of itself is not enough. We are going to publish a guidance letter that essentially trying to figure out why you particularly have to have this kind of a governance structure. So I think new economy as a definition is a necessary condition, but there are a whole lot of other factors we'll be looking at it.
That was Charles Lee, HK Exchanges and Clearing Chief Executive, speaking to Bloomberg's Rashad Salamat. And staying in Asia, despite a slowing economy, China's travel industry continues to embrace eruptive growth in the last couple of years. James Leong, founder and chairman of Ctrip, expects the company also to carry on its robust growth.
As Chinese currency becomes stabilized and also China continue to run a large trade surplus, I think the outbound travel will continue to grow very robustly in the near future. And China, the current statistics is only less than 5% of people have a passport versus US, like 20% of people have a passport. So it's still a long way to go.
How would you characterize the competition that you're seeing domestically, whether that's Alibaba-backed travel company, whether that's Meituan? How do you characterize that? Are they starting to carve out more market share now?
Yeah, it's still a very big market, and all parts of the market are growing very rapidly. Meituan specifically focus on food delivery and low end of the travel market. They've been doing well, at least volume-wise. But our high-end business is actually growing very nicely too, and it's actually, we think, is higher margin, and long-term wise, it's has more potential. So we think we are in a very good position.
Tencent and Alibaba that seem to be carving out space across a number of sectors. How does that affect how you navigate and drive the business?
Well, I think there's some very big players because the number of transactions they generate is many times bigger than Ctrip. But in terms of value generated, Ctrip is actually one of the biggest up there because travel is going to continue to be growing faster than the rest of the economy, and it will represent higher share of the overall market. And Ctrip also has a very good opportunity to succeed in non-Chinese market. So I think in the long run, Ctrip will be one of the big players, and we don't see them in the travel market close to have the scale as Ctrip has now.
Would you consider further acquisitions in 2018?
Yeah, we're always actively looking for good fit for technology and market focus. So anything that's complementary to our technology offering and also market presence in different parts of the world, yeah, we are always very interested in.
Particularly, what kind of technology are you looking for, and what regions are you expecting to present opportunities? Yeah,
last year we've invested in Skyscanner, air ticketing, very good air ticketing technology, and the consumer brand in UK, and also invested a few years ago, we invested Travel Fusion, which is also a technology platform for low-cost airline products. So those kind of things we're looking for travel technology partners and consumer brands in markets where we don't still have a lot of a presence yet. Yeah.
That was Ctrip founder and chairman James Leong with Bloomberg's Tom McKenzie. Coming up, Twitter shares soar. Wall Street gives the company its 5th stock upgrade in the last 2 months. We'll take a look at the latest vote of confidence. This is Bloomberg. A stock we are watching, Twitter shares surged 11% on Monday, hitting its highest intraday price since fall of 2016. A JP Morgan analyst upgraded the stock to overweight and raised the price target to a street high, $27 from $20. This is the 5th upgrade for Twitter since late October, when shares surged on better than expected results. Stifel, UBS, Argus, and Citi have all recently upgraded the stock. And Twitter has begun enforcing stricter policies on violent and abusive content. The new guidelines were first announced 1 month ago, but were only now put into place. Twitter is also prohibiting users from abusing or threatening others through their profiles or usernames. That includes a decision to keep the president's retweet of a video that contained violent anti-Muslim sentiment. The group that sent out the original tweet is now banned from Twitter. Earlier this year, we sat down with Twitter COO Anthony Noto and asked him about President Trump's impact on the platform.
We can't causally say whether or not the increased focus on politics and newsworthy events is driving the growth because we don't have a holdback to measure that. But we did analyze some correlated factors. There was an increase in our new and resurrected users and the percentage of accounts that they follow that fell into news and politics. but beyond that, it's really hard to measure that specific impact.
So is there any way to give us a little bit more color on whether it's the president using the platform itself or his followers or greater engagement with the president himself?
I would say product and marketing has been the consistent trend on the 4 quarters of acceleration. We'll continue to analyze the data. Listen, Twitter benefits when influential people in the world use our platform to tell what's happening. We encourage that. We love the discussion. We love the conversation that's happening. And so the more it happens, the better we are going to be at showing you what's happening in the world and what's being talked about. So we'd love it if every world leader used Twitter as their primary mechanism to talk to their constituencies.
Sources have told me you're kind of like the soul of Twitter right now. I mean, obviously, we know you've been working very hard. How Twitter is navigating some rough patches. How would you describe how you're approaching your job as COO and CFO, and sort of explain this idea of being the soul of the company?
The first thing I'd say is I love working with Jack and the rest of the leadership team. We approach running the company as a team that's focused on specific priorities, and we divide and conquer against those priorities. Titles are what the world has decided are our responsibilities, but at the end of the day, we divide up the priorities amongst our team on what's most important to accomplish. I wouldn't want to work with anyone else other than the team that I'm working with at Twitter right now with this team, including Jack. He's an inspiration. In today's new front, our first new front, Jack stood up at the end, no rehearsals, no script, and just delivered the heart and soul of what Twitter is. And so I live and breathe every day to help that vision come to life, because that's what made Twitter so special over the last 11 years. He couldn't be a better partner, and our teammates couldn't be a stronger team.
What is it like, though, working with a guy that is CEO of another company?
It can be daunting, and it can be inspiring. Jack is there for 100% of the decisions. He has insights and has license to make decisions that none of us as executives or any outside executive could ever make. So it's a powerful relationship to have with the company, and I think it's made us better in the last 2 years that he's been at the helm of Twitter.
On that note, we talk a lot about the potential drawbacks, right, of running two companies. Are there any benefits that come with that?
It's funny. The media wants to ask us about having dual roles. I don't ever think about it until the media asks me. When I have something to talk to Jack about, we talk about it. When we have something to discuss as a team, we discuss as a team. Like I said, we're together for 100% of the decisions, and at the end of the day, that's what running a company is all about.
Twitter hired banks last fall to explore a sale, at least as Bloomberg reporting goes. What's the latest?
The latest is we haven't commented on that situation. The board understands its fiduciary duty. They support the strategy we have and the plan we have in place and the great progress that we're delivering, with 4 consecutive quarters of daily active user growth accelerating back to 14%. I've been around the internet sector since 1998, and I've seen a lot of companies come and go. I can count on one hand the number of companies that saw a deceleration in growth the way Twitter did in 2015, and then to re-accelerate the growth in 2016 for 4 consecutive quarters is just a Herculean accomplishment, and I couldn't be prouder of our engineering, product, and design team and all the rest of the employees that make it happen every day at Twitter and Jack's leadership. So we have a lot to do. We're still at the beginning of the beginning. We haven't come close to accomplishing the long-term goals that we have, and we're committed to that, and we'll be resilient along the way. We'll recognize the missteps that we make and make sure we don't make them a second time.
Do you see Twitter as an independent company?
I see Twitter as a company that can have the largest impact in the world that I've ever seen from any company, both economically and otherwise.
So let's go.
That's why I'm at Twitter.
Okay. A year from now, where is Twitter? What is the fruit of you pounding the pavement and all of these deals? What do we see in a year?
I think we'll continue to see very consistent execution against our positioning, which is Twitter's the best at showing you what's happening in the world and what's being talked about. And the way we do that is we keep investing in being faster in breaking news, more comprehensive selection, more discussion and conversation, and personalized in a bigger way. If we invest in those 4 things consistently over and over, we'll continue to have the strongest ability to deliver what's happening in the world. And that will drive more user growth, and that will drive more engagement and more revenue.
And if Facebook and Google have the biggest part of the pie right now, how much does Twitter have in a year, 2 years?
Twitter doesn't have as big as a pie that we hope to have someday, but the work is on us to deliver that value to the audience, and then that will bring the value and revenue for their shareholders.
That was Twitter COO Anthony Noto back in May. We should note that Bloomberg LP operates a global breaking news network on Twitter called TikTok. And that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology. That is all for now. This is Bloomberg.